Take your place in the Coaching Lounge. Be inspired by discussions with motivational guests, compelling speakers, key people of influence, and models of success. Learn unique processes, strategies, and tips that will transform your life. Tune into previous episodes on www.thecoachinglounge.co.uk. Like our page on Facebook via The Coaching Lounge. Follow us on Twitter @Satellite Coach. Thank you for joining your host, Rebecca Gordon, in The Coaching Lounge. Tune in, relax, engage, and transform your life now. Ladies, are you single and want to meet the person of your dreams, yet are increasingly left with the feeling that this is near impossible to do? Are you new on the dating scene and feel confused about the approach to take that will move you from singledom to coupled up with your honey? Then this show is for you, and quite selfishly for me too. But today what we're going to do is that we're going to give some real eye-openers on the practical and unique things that you can do to date more of the kind of guys you want to meet. Our guest, Michelle Barnum Smith, is a dating coach. Well, sort of. Really, she's a 15-year corporate marketing veteran who applied the principles of marketing to her own dating life and got married. Great result. Michelle now teaches other singles how to find love by applying marketing to their dating lives. And Michelle has been featured on Forbes, Business Insider, The Examiner, ExpertBeacon.com, and on several TV and radio shows in America. So I'm really delighted and honored to have Michelle Barnum Smith join us in the Coaching Lounge. Welcome, Michelle.
Oh, thank you so much, Rebecca. And thank you for being my first international radio show. This is super. This is my first international milestone.
Fantastic.
So thank you for
Fantastic. Well, hey, we're going to have you on again, so the experience will be repeated. And I'm really honored to have you here. I mean, it's always great to talk about dating because, you know, we tend to have moans with our girlfriends on this date not working well because dating is such an emotive experience. And, you know, at its best, it can make you feel like nothing else exists in the world except you and your loved one. But at its worst, you know, you can be left with a feeling that you're never, ever going to date again. So welcome to Michelle, who created a concept for anyone who wants to look at dating in a fresh, new way. So thank you for that, Michelle, because your concept is called Marketing to Marriage. And your approach is quite different. So can you tell us about yourself and how this came about?
Yeah, absolutely. So just kind of like what you said in my bio, I've been doing marketing for almost 15 years now. I think a little actually over 15 years. And I think actually way before then, when I was a young girl in school, I started using marketing in my personal life. I would go to dances with my friends, and the girls would all be, you know, stuck to the walls and avoiding eye contact and running for the bathrooms if guys ever came their way. Yeah. And I started noticing that nobody was dancing, you know, that none of my friends were getting asked to dance. Nobody was dancing. And so I grabbed a couple of my girls and started walking the room and kind of showcasing the wares, if you will. And I think I was like 13 or 14 years old, but I said, you know, if you want to move the product, you need to advertise. And I think that's really where it all kind of started for me in way back in the day. But yeah, my professional background is not dating coaching. It's actually marketing. Right. And I've made a lot of money for a lot of very large companies in this world's economy, we'll say. And so that's really my background is marketing.
Okay. And I like from an early age, you know, the real life examples you gave with your girlfriends. But I'll tell you something, Michelle, walking the room and showcasing the wares, it sounds really scary, you know.
I know, it's true.
I mean, especially if if you've had bad experiences about dating. So what we're talking about is a whole new perspective on how we're looking at dating here. So where should people start when trying to market themselves?
So let's talk first about where people most likely are today, and normal, sane, wonderful individuals, when it comes to dating, essentially lose their minds. We become crazy people because, just like what you were saying, like it's such this emotional thing that we're going through, and all logic flies out the window, and all, anything that once had some element of sanity to it just becomes crazy. So most of the time, what people are doing today is engaging in behavior called hope dating. They go to a party and they hope they meet somebody. They meet somebody and they hope he calls. He calls and they hope this works out.
It sounds familiar. Yes.
Right, exactly. And so really, even before we think about marketing and talk about what that is, you have to kind of shift from this hope-based dating to more purpose-based dating. You're going to have more purposeful efforts. And I liken this to losing weight. I'm a new mom. My baby's 8 months old, and I still got the baby weight to lose, right? And so when we have a weight loss goal, the first step is to recognize that change is up to you. It's not up to my spouse. It's not, I can't say my prayers at night and hope and pray away the baby weight in the middle of the night. Please, I would love to wake up and have it melted off my body. But that's just not how the way it is. It's up to me. It's up to me. And so that's the first step, is that you have to recognize that change is up to you. The second is to identify, okay, well, what's my game plan? What am I going to do about this weight? And obviously there's, pick the infomercial of the day. There's a new book coming out, and, whatever. There's all sorts of different options that are out there. But at the end of the day, those books, those DVDs, those programs, they're not going to do any good if they sit on the shelf. I have to take the required steps. I'm the one who has to get out there and work out. I'm the one who has to change how I'm eating if I want the results. Now, that's all very logical, right? You would expect that, except when it comes to your love life. All of a sudden, people take, this idea of rational steps and throw it out the window in the face of, the universe will bring me my spouse when it's the right time. If God really loved me, things would just fall into place. If my mom really wants me to get married, she'll go find me a husband. I don't know what it is. So you wouldn't hope to lose weight. You wouldn't hope to get a better job. You wouldn't hope to get into a tough grad school program. You would take the steps necessary. You would make sure that you knew what was required of you, and that if you really wanted it, that you would make the efforts to make it happen. And the same thing applies to dating as well. These things can't be left up to hope. You have to be purposeful in your approach.
And it is, I was reading actually Anthony Robbins, who said, when you're thinking about something that you want to have happen, there's a big difference in energy between hope and expectation. So your tips to move from hope to purposeful efforts, it's, you almost have to say, well, I'm expecting this to happen. I expect this to be, the way it is for me. And I love those 3 tips. Number 1, recognize it's up to me. Number 2, ask, what am I going to do, to make this change? And number 3, make the efforts to make it happen.
Relax in the coaching lounge and engage with compelling, motivational speakers. Be prepared to transform your inner world, to shape your outer world through empowering discussions. Tune into thecoachinglounge.co.uk now.
So, we're committed to making an effort with dating. What do we need to look out for?
Yeah, so I think this is a fairly common thing. I think, especially for the listeners out there, maybe you've all reached this point where you're fed up with your dating life, you're ready to make something happen, and you probably said to yourself at some point or another, I am now making an effort. I am now going to really try to make something happen. dating life. And one of the big problems that I see often when people make this statement is what I call the feast or famine approach to dating. So the feast portion is when you kind of have this self-realization moment where you're recommitting, and then suddenly you're everywhere. You're social, you're going to parties, maybe you have some online dating profiles, you maybe even trying some dating apps, you're asking friends to set you up, like you're out there, you're doing everything. And because of that, you're probably meeting new people, maybe you're even going on dates, and maybe you're even, after a few months of this, actually in a relationship. And a few months later, that relationship ends, and at the end of that relationship, you're totally exhausted. You here for months now, you've been quote unquote making an effort. Your life is out of balance because you've been focused all over in that part of your life, and maybe your house is a mess, I don't know. But at the end of the day, you're feeling kind of that jaded, bitter, depressed feeling towards dating. And so what you really want to do is just take a break. Have you ever said that? I'm taking a break.
It's like, it's almost as if sometimes like the radar is, every person I meet will actually be this horrible, nasty person because, this is the experience I've had. Maybe so you just reverse the process and you take yourself totally out of dating, as you say. Yeah. And I know this is... this is probably, a lot of ladies listening to this are probably quite familiar with this sort of like feast or famine approach. So you're saying that's a pitfall to watch out for?
Yeah, well, it's the feast or famine approach to dating. And what you really have to do is have a plan-based effort for dating. And sometimes when I say that to people, they cringe because they're just like, oh, it's going to be so much work. You're asking me to do so much. And I'm really not. A plan-based effort is all about helping you to work smarter, not harder. It's about making strategic decisions, not emotional ones. I call it using logic to motivate you, not loneliness. Because loneliness is it's that weight on your chest. It's that dark place on the weekends that you just want to avoid, that you don't want to feel that anymore. And when that is your core motivator, it can put you into that desperation mode that then leads to yet another failed relationship, yet more disillusionment towards dating, really believing that there are good men out there. There are good people who want love and to love you specifically. And this plan-based effort, one of the aspects of it is that it's not exhausting. It's sustainable, it's balanced, and best of all, it's because it's efficient. You know what you're doing, you know when you're doing it, and you aren't motivated by this, what's going on? I can't be home this weekend. I got to get out of the house, that kind of behavior.
And you're talking about the plan-based efforts. I'm intrigued now. I need to know. How do you build a dating plan?
So this is really where my business background comes into play because, for example, I had the opportunity to go on a round the world business trip, and it was pretty cool. Started in China and ended up in Paris on my birthday.
Very nice.
And yeah, pretty cool. And but I was in Paris on my birthday, completely romantically alone,
what?
completely single. In the most romantic city.
Okay.
Right. Not something you want on your birthday, right? And it was there kind of at the end of this business trip that I had this aha moment of like, holy cow, this is not where I thought I'd be at this point in my life, And then as most aha moments are followed up with just kind of that like, well, what am I going to do about it? And I kind of had this realization that on this business trip, I had been building marketing plans every step of the way. And I'd been building them in China for a government institution. And I'd been building them in London and Frankfurt and and Amsterdam and in Paris, and as well as the United States, obviously. And I recognized and realized that marketing plans have steps to them that apply across the board. It didn't matter how large the businesses or the entities or organizations were. It didn't matter what company or culture they were located in. It didn't actually even matter what kind of product it was. The steps were the same every single time for building a marketing plan. And so what you have to do is you have to start out asking yourself 3 basic questions from a marketing perspective. You have to ask first, what is the product? Second, who is the product best for? And third, where are those people? Where are they at? Now, in my personal experience, I lived the feast or famine approach, for years and made 0 progress for a number of reasons. The first reason was that I was not sold on the product. I was trying to get away from me when I dated. I didn't like me. I was lonely. I was depressed. I was frustrated. I was stuck in the why am I single mode. And so when I dated, I was dating for validation, not from a place of healthy of healthiness in and of myself. I was trying to essentially use somebody's attention to make me feel good about myself. So that was really the first problem.
Yeah, because we tend to do that. We want happiness, but we think we look for happiness outside when actually happiness is within, isn't it? It's what we create from what we have.
Absolutely. So the second problem that I had in my feast or famine approach was that I was not dating the best audience for my product. I was dating the guys who were all wrong for me. I had my list, and it was long and totally unattainable. Okay. We're looking for that perfect person, right? Do you have a list?
I have a list of values that I would be seeking from, the person that I want to attract into my life.
Right. And I bet most of your listeners out there, they whether we physically have a list or not, we've got a list. We're like, this, there's got to be this.
I'm quite intrigued. I think we might have to have you back on, Michelle, because I'm actually stuck at the product at this moment. Can I share with you what I'm stuck at? How it's sort of like seeing yourself, because you said what is a product, who is the product best for, and what where are these people at? But seeing oneself as a product and the perception of that, it's sort of like looking at yourself in a different way. Can you help me with that? When you say what is the product, I mean, how are we looking at ourselves as a product?
Yeah, so how I used marketing to get married was that I had to get good with my product first. So what that meant was I had to really understand what I had to offer. I had to take a look at myself and really find out about the good, the bad, and the ugly. I had to identify those things about me, my strengths, my weaknesses. As silly as it sounds, one of the exercises that I have people go through in my program is just understanding kind of like some basic things about yourself. And one of the things that I identified for years was that I hated running. I hate running. I just hate it. And all of my friends love it. And so for years, I acted like I liked running because I wanted to be, cool, I guess, whatever. And it was kind of one of those, I don't know, as silly as it sounds, one of those kind of liberating moments where I was just like, oh, you know what? No, I hate running. It was like this, I'm okay with that, And it's kind of those things that understanding and getting to know that about you and then getting good with it. So even those things about yourself where maybe there's some extra pudge here, or maybe you have some, character traits that you're not overly happy with, but, it's fine. you have to understand first what you have to offer, and then second, you got to get good with it.
Sorry to interrupt. So, in marketing to marriage, actually, I mean, we all know it starts with the self and with you, but really what you're saying is that before we even entertain dating, you've actually got to stand up and strip yourself off, stand in front of the mirror, take a look at yourself, not just outside, but inside, and think about, well, who you are.
Yeah.
What is the product? I get that now very clearly. So it's about your values, your beliefs, what you represent, what you want to, as you say, get good with.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of people, and I don't advocate taking time away from dating to work on yourself. That's another excuse that we use sometimes is, oh, well, I'm taking a break. I'm just going to work on myself right now. It's basically essentially taking your product off the market, right? And businesses never do that. If you have a smartphone, maybe an iPhone or an Android, and if you looked at the applications, they're always coming out with new versions. They're always coming out with new bug fixes and improvements with the product. And they don't wait until the product is perfect to get it out there. And neither should we. We have to embrace that just where we are today. We have to start with where we're at. But that doesn't mean we have to take ourselves off the market to redesign or, whatever it means. It's okay for you not to be perfect. Because you're still lovable. I think even more because you're not perfect, especially if you're the one that's embracing it and just being like, that's a lot of it.
And this is why I'm glad that we're having this conversation in the coaching lounge, because these things are just great to hear. It's really affirming to know, actually, well, I am working in process. And like you've said, it's about asking yourself, well, if there's work to be done, well, what bug am I going to fix today? But to know we can still get out there and still, because we have got a lot of love to share, which is great. So sorry for interrupting, your flow. You were talking about the guys on the dating list. But yes.
So that's, and the reason is sometimes what happens and why it's so crucial for us to start with ourselves first is because sometimes we get into the mode where we're creating a product for somebody else, where we're trying to change ourselves or present ourselves in such a way so that we can best be attractive to another person.
At that point, that's well worth stopping this recording and rewinding. I think it's really crucial. We actually, change who we are because we think we're not good enough, when we need to find that value, for ourselves, the self-worth.
Yeah, absolutely. And I put it on Instagram just this week. I get asked all the time, where is the best place to find someone that the right person for me? And I tell people the mirror. Yes. You got to look in the mirror. That's the best place to find the right person for you, because you have to be right for you first. And it goes back to that whole concept of, would you buy what you're selling? Because if you wouldn't, no one else will. And you can pretend to be something you're not all day long, but you're essentially dooming any relationships that start with essentially a lie, because if you're not sold on you, if you're just trying to use somebody else's attention and affection to compensate for something that you personally can't find within yourself for yourself, it's over before it begins.
Think big for a moment. If you could create your best life, how would this look? What if, in just 30 minutes, you had a plan of action to get closer to your dream? Make the impossible possible and claim your free session today. Visit www.satellitelifecoaching.com now.
Let me ask you then, Michelle. I mean, it's a fascinating topic. When you said, well, would you have that product out on display on the shelf? How do you know where to present the product? I mean, it's sort of like there's so many places to go to these days, so many things to do, so many dating sites.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So that's the kind of the brilliance in marketing is that, and we skipped a step a little bit in the sense that we have to understand that second step of, well, who is really best for me and what I have to offer. So I'm not just going to chase a guy who, flirts with me. I'm going to actually really kind of like take a step back and identify what's really most important to me. And you have to review, you got to dig deep. Unfortunately, maybe review some of those past experiences, those cringe worthy, relationships. What was I thinking?
I'm sure we've all had one of those, haven't we?
It's true. You're among friends, we'll say. Nobody's done this perfectly. But you have to identify those negative patterns and those both negative and positive patterns, and get clear on what is most important to you. And when I did this, I realized, I had this huge long list of what I thought I needed, and it wasn't crazy things, but I really got clear on what was most important to me, and kind of drilled it down to 4 core things. And it's by understanding to get clear on what you want from your audience, that then when you go looking for it, not only are you more likely to see it when it presents itself, but you actually get clearer on where to actually find that kind of person. So, for example, I had to change my social efforts to actually intersect with the kind of person that I wanted to be with. I think sometimes when we're thinking about the weekend or wondering where to meet people, we kind of get stuck into these social ruts. Maybe we go to the same club, the same parties, we hang out with the same friends, or maybe you've been in the same online site
because
forever.
It's comfortable and familiar, isn't it? We feel safe.
Mm-hmm, yeah. And that's exactly what it is. But I realized that I was not very productive in my dating efforts. I would show up and I would complain because the same old people were there every single time, the same kind of guys over and over and over again. And I realized that I was going to have to leave my social comfort zone. I was going to have to leave my friends for a few weeks, maybe even months, and branch out to try to find new things. I had to consider activities, both online and in person, that I normally wouldn't have. I had to think about my target audience and think about, well, where is this person most likely to be? And then I had to put myself in the best places and positions to actually meet them. And on top of that, I had to be strategic with the use of my time. So yeah, there might be a party going on, and yeah, that sounds like it's something fun to do. But then I would stop myself and be like, who's going to be there? What are the kinds of people who are going to be there? Is that the best use of my time? And what I realized over and over again was that it wasn't. That I had already either considered those guys and just found nothing there, or maybe he had dated some of those guys and found nothing there, let's be honest. And so it actually freed me up to pursue other routes to market, if you will.
Yeah, it does take some bravery. So help us with that, please.
Right. Well, so this is where we get back to making decisions from logic versus loneliness. So let's just use a business example really quick. If I am a company and I have my target audience are like a certain type of guy. Well, let's use a business example first. So if I'm trying to target men in Georgia with, I don't know, athletic shoes, am I going to put a billboard on the freeway in downtown New York City? Probably not. That's not probably the best use of my money, time, expenses, all of those things. From a marketing perspective, if I did that, I'd probably be fired because billboards in Manhattan are expensive. And my target audience is in Georgia, so it's it's one of those things. And so that's a logic-based decision. And so essentially, when we're making decisions just because we're feeling lonely and we need something to do, that's when we're making decisions that aren't necessarily logical. And we have to think, well, if my target audience isn't there and I'm likely to get sucked back into the same old relationships, the same old routine, the same old type of guy, how about I make a logical decision and say, well, I'm not going to market in New York if my target audience is in Georgia. I've got to break free and try London.
Yeah. So it's actually creating a new experience, if you like, just to get feedback.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I had a client once who she figured out her target audience was, she was tall. She was almost 6 feet tall, and she needed a tall white guy basically, and and she usually would go to parties and try to interact with those guys, but she was really sports oriented and different things like that. And so she was like, you know what, I'm going to join some sporting activities, like some group sporting leagues. I'm going to join a running club. She even created like a running group for her area. And there were a lot of singles who lived in her area. And so she wasn't just going to her target audience and trying to find them. She was luring them to her by hosting her own kind of targeted activities. And so those are just some examples of the things. And that's how I usually, sometimes our list, our criteria of what we're looking for is very ethereal and spiritual and blah, blah, blah. But sometimes it needs to be like, you know what? I like a guy who likes outdoorsy things. Okay, well, maybe see if there's like an outdoor club in your area that you can go to a few activities or events. Or maybe you guys like guys who are intellectual, who like to discuss politics or books. Maybe try some online forums that discuss those things, or maybe go to your local bookstore and see if they have like a book club, or, there's different things that you can branch out. Is it comfortable? Is it easy to do? Is it easy to leave your friends behind, leave your wingmen, your wing girls, your girlfriends?
If we're doing it with someone, perhaps if they're not, they haven't got the same intention as us, or the same motivation, they can actually hold us back, perhaps.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also warn people, I'm like, don't bring your competition with you. Men have enough competition for their attention. Don't bring your friends to be your competition. And that can be hard. That's one of those things. You can wean yourself off your friends if you need to, little by little. But it's just something to start trying, and thinking about. So when people ask, well, where do I go to meet new people? I say, well, it depends on your target audience. It depends on your audience. What are they likely to be spending their time doing? Now, identify where you can intersect them.
Right.
While they're doing that.
We are in the coaching lounge with Michelle Barnum Smith, who is the dating coach, marketer, and she's helping us to get to use marketing to get married. And you've joined us here today, and it's a fascinating show. Michelle, we need to have you back again. We've got 30 minutes left in the lounge, and I just want you to touch on the thing about the dating list, because you asked me, you said, have you got a list? And you probably heard the reticence in my voice. I think I was a little bit embarrassed to say, well, yes, I've got this list. But actually, if the truth be known, I'm not sure if the list is actually working. So how do I need to approach this list? What needs to, you've actually said to make it practical, right? Yeah, make it practical. So once I've got the list, then what? Yes, I go out, I meet new people, but then what?
So let's back up a second. So let's talk about the list. And it's not, it's not shameful to have a list. And in fact, in marketing, you have to, because you're not all things for all people. Even Nike, the biggest athletic, clothing company in the world, has, they have products that nearly anybody could wear. The little grandmas wearing their white tennies, or maybe some little kids wearing a t-shirt, but Nike has a very specific target audience that they are trying to reach. And if you watch any of their ads, it's pretty easy to start to pick out, well, who are they trying to get? It's that single young professional with disposable income who cares about their appearance, cares about not only being fit but looking good while they're pursuing it, while they're pursuing being fit, And so just like Nike, you need to own your audience. You need to get real in defining them. Now, what happens typically is that people get extreme. Either their list is 400 lines long and totally unattainable. And oftentimes, if we have a list that looks like that, we usually build it out of a place of defensiveness. So think of yourself, you're there in England, there's plenty of castles, not so much here in the United States, but, think of every item on that list as a brick that you're laying in the walls of a castle around you. And yeah, that castle can look really pretty from far away, but you get up close and you might wonder, well, how do I get in there? And I think a lot of guys probably feel this way, where they're like, man, she has so many defenses up. She has so many things that she thinks she needs or wants, and all of these different things. And guys are, I'm not going to let them off the hook. They're guilty of the same things, but usually more shallow. But sometimes we surround ourselves with this list as a defense mechanism. We've been burned in the past. We've had some bad experiences where we're like, oh my gosh, that's never going to happen again. I'm adding it to the list, He's better and he's got to, and all of these things, right? And so the healthier approach is to review. You have to review your past experiences and identify the positives and the negatives of the people that you dated. You have to identify, okay, well, what are those positive qualities that I appreciated, and what were those negative qualities that I didn't? And I call it the porcupine and the elk exercise, because you're identifying, I liken both in business marketing and in personal marketing, when you first start dating, when you're young, or maybe when you're starting over yet again, you're kind of in a place, you're like a caveman in a cave. You're sitting there, you've got your rock, and you've just figured out how to make fire, and your stomach rumbles and you're hungry. You're hungry. And so if I'm hungry and I've got my babies in my brood and my husband has got his club, and I'm going to grunt at him and tell him to go out there and bring us something to eat, right? What is he going to drag back to the cave? What are some things that you think he's going to drag back to the cave, Rebecca? So maybe like a woolly mammoth, maybe a saber-toothed tiger, right? Maybe a squirrel, maybe a skunk, maybe he drags in a porcupine, maybe drags in an elk. So over time, you're going to learn experiences from what he drags in. The mammoth is way too big. It makes a mess. We can't get to half the meat before it goes bad. The squirrel is way too little. It's all mealy and it's not worth all the effort. The porcupine, oh my gosh. It's just like, it leaves you bloodied and bruised and broken, and you shake your fist at him, But the elk we like, there's, the meat tastes good. You can use it, as decor for the cave. You can put the rug down. You can mount it on the wall. Yeah. I don't know what all those things, but all of a sudden you learn, hey, we like elk. So the next time I grunt at my husband to go drag something back to the cave, what is he going to bring back? Is he going to bring back a porcupine or an elk? Yes. Right, exactly. So we have to recognize that sometimes in our dating past we've been hungry, right? And we'll take whoever comes along. And sometimes we're lucky enough to have that be an elk, but more often than not, we probably have come up with a few porcupines. I think it's probably safe to say that we've all dated our fair share of porcupines, where we're just like, gosh.
What I have done, I've done the exercise, look at the positives and the negatives in people I've dated. And I've had some common themes. So it's a really good exercise for people to do, for me to understand, actually, this is what I do find desirable in somebody, that I would like to have as my partner. So I know I've got key qualities and key values that are important. However, what tends to happen is that those are there, I know that's what I'm looking for, so I attract that and that comes. But what if it is that we're doing the work on ourselves, and there's work to be done on the person that we're with, so therefore they've got the things that we desire, but yet there are other undesirables. How do we work with that in the dating scene? Do you know what I mean? Does that make sense, that question?
There's rarely perfection out there, but I think a lot of the times, that going back to the whole list concept is we have to get back to the core of what we're really looking for, and so like when I finally got clarity on what was most important to me, because I was this businesswoman, I was traveling and I was making the money and blah, 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 all these things. And I thought that I needed a businessman who could keep up with me. Right. And we have these little checkbox items that you're talking to somebody and you're like, oh, he's a lawyer, he's a doctor, I got to hang on to this one, kind of a thing. Check. Moving on, and what we don't realize sometimes when we lead with the checkbox items, that we might end up accidentally with things that we actually really don't want. For example, what characteristics are you really looking for when you're going after a doctor, for example? You probably think he's, going to make some good money, support a family, all of those things. But some byproducts of dating and subsequently marrying a doctor might include ridiculous amounts of debt that had to be, acquired to go through medical school. Somebody who's never around, because being a doctor is really time consuming, all of these different things. When I was dating, I thought I needed this businessman. Somebody who could keep up with me, right? And so, but what I inadvertently ended up with was guys who were intimidated by me because I was further along in my career than they were. Guys who wanted to compete with me because they needed to make more money than I did, that kind of a thing. And at the end of the day, guys who just weren't kind, They were they had like that ambitious streak that sometimes shows up in the business world as just, not kindness. And what I identified, what I really needed when I was saying business person, what I really meant was somebody who was hardworking, somebody who was committed to, wanting to provide for a family, somebody who wasn't afraid of work. Because heavens, you've never met somebody who's got a business degree who doesn't have a job, He's got to have an MBA. Yeah. All right. How many MBAs are out there who don't do jack with it, or lazy sitting around waiting for life to deliver something to them. So I realized I had to translate those list items to the core attributes I was really looking for. And when I saw that, so my core attributes were hardworking, kind, loves Jesus, because I wanted him to be, spiritually on my level. And gosh, now I can't remember the fourth one. I can't remember. So let's just say those top three right there, or like wants a family. We'll say that. So when I cut it down to those four things, when I first met my husband, there were some rodeos that were going on, and I'm not a cowboy type of person, but I was just like, I'll go. It's not something I would typically do to actually look for a spouse there, kind of a thing, but I'll go and see, and that's where I met him.
Sorry to interrupt, but what you're saying is that when you were in Paris, you recognize actually you had the aha moment. So I need to really be purposeful here. And then you put you transferred your marketing for your business into the dating. And then is there sort of like a delay before you met your husband? Is it over a period of weeks or months or?
Not weeks, unfortunately. It was 3 years. So, I didn't have a process. Somebody didn't just hand me something to like follow and hold me accountable for. I had to figure it out on my own as I went along. And what you hear now are like the pretty little secrets that I've like been able to, pull up there. But, I made mistakes along the way. I went back to my old ways. It's hard not to, let's be honest, in my old patterns. But as I practiced, and actually right before my husband was probably one of the worst relationships of my life. And why was it the worst? Because I was like, when I met the guy, I was just probably in one of my lowest places emotionally, how I felt about myself and towards myself, and so I was really in a place where I was susceptible to making bad decisions, making decisions out of need for validation, desperation, not wanting to be alone, not wanting to to be and feel lonely, you know, those things. And after I broke up with that situation, that was kind of my like second aha, where I was just like, you know what, I gotta get real with, I know better. And that's when I got good with me. I spent, you know, several months just processing those emotions and getting to a point where and I remember where I was when it happened. I was coming back from California with some of my girlfriends on a road trip, and the sun was setting, you know, it was golden light hitting the mountains, and I just felt truly content with myself. Kind of that like internal peace and happiness. I wasn't perfect, but
and that's
okay
crucial, isn't it?
You know?
Yeah.
And it's so, gosh. For me, it was kind of one of those moments where I was like, okay, all right. And I remember saying in prayer, I was like, all right, Heavenly Father, I think I like me again. I think I'm ready to try this for real this time. And shortly thereafter was my moment of clarity about what really was important to me in a partner, in a husband, what I was really looking for. And so not only was I able to admit that to myself, spiritually speaking, I was also able to involve God in the process and feeling like, you know, I'm not this whiny brat asking for, you know, this list of things I need for Christmas, you know, in a spouse. It's like, you know what, I think this is actually really what I'm looking for, what I really need. And so when I did meet him at the rodeo of all places, I would never have considered him previously if I had been looking for the businessman and all of these things. When I saw him, I actually recognized what I was looking for.
When you were in the past situation, you said, when I broke up with that situation, and automatically there's a shift in energy, because it's not the person, it's the behaviors and the attributes that we know we don't want. Yeah. So breaking up with that situation.
Yeah.
And you said that allowed you the space to be at peace with yourself. And I was able to choose, you know, who is now is your husband. So that's really a place of empowerment, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, that, I think that is the part, you know, we go back to that very first idea of hope dating, of hoping that, you know, if God really loved you, you know, if the universe really valued what your happiness, you know, those things, that they would bring it to you. But like, we have to be in that place personally, I think, for God to be able to act. I know that he has a plan for you and for me, but we have to have that plan for ourselves too. And once we are ready for it, you know, by taking these steps and preparing ourselves and putting ourselves, being the right person, identifying the best person, and then putting ourselves in the best places to actually meet that person. That's when, you know, all of a sudden my husband is working on his life too prior to meeting me and making changes in his life. And so, you know, that's where God is the ultimate matchmaker.
I must invite you back into the coaching lounge, because it would be well worth exploring, you know, the first date, and, you know, there's always a lot of tension in how to behave, maybe, I don't know. And questions to ask, you know, just the logistics of it and the energy of it. But just in the last few minutes of the show, let's just focus a little bit more on the marketing then, to get to that point. Do people need a business or marketing background to market themselves? How can someone learn how to do this?
Yeah. So, you know, that's one of the biggest fears that people have sometimes, is like, I don't have a business background, you know, I'm not in marketing. How do I actually, like, you know, apply marketing to myself? And that's where I've done like the dirty work. Essentially, I've created a personal marketing course that people can go through. It's 5 weeks long. It's online. It's self-paced. So it's not like you have only 5 weeks to do it, especially for those people who are maybe, you know, coming out of a relationship and are like, you know, in that mode, or maybe things are going well for them right now. You know, this is accessible, you know, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, you know, once you buy it, it's yours, kind of a thing. And in that, over those 5 weeks, we go through the 5 areas of identifying, I call it branding, identifying what you have to offer, and then getting good with it. We go over targeting, identifying who really is best for you, which leads you to advertising. Well, how do I identify where should I meet this person? And then as a bonus to that, we get into selling yourself, just kind of like what you mentioned, how to flirt to get that first date, and then what to actually do on that first, second, and third date. So usually it's $197, but I have it discounted for your listeners for the next 3 days, 50% off. So it's $97 for the next 3 days. So people can go to marketingtomarriage.com and just click on the Marketing to Marriage program link, and it'll take them to the page where they can get it. They can learn more about it, and they can get started on building that marketing background. And I'm a professional individual, but I also I made those mistakes too, and over again. So I know how hard it can be, and I know that we have those aha moments where we're sick and tired of being sick and tired. We're tired of of being lonely, and just like I said, I know that Heavenly Father has a plan for all of His children, but you got to have a plan for you too.
And we actually do have a question from one of the listeners to the Coaching Lounge. And the question is this. I mean, really, this should be for the next program that we record with you, but I'm going to ask it anyway. We'll squeeze it in. The question is, what questions should we be asking on the first date?
So this is really crucial, actually. This is a great question, and we can talk more in depth about this the next time as well. But the first date, the first 3 dates actually are very crucial in the sense that most people attack especially the first date, as if it was some sort of job interview, as if it's some form of interrogation, And if you think back onto probably like when you first started dating, maybe earlier in your 20s, late teen years, dating was all about having fun. It was about going and doing things together that were fun. And what I really recommend for people is, instead of going to dinner and facing each other and essentially having it be a tennis match of questions and answers and interpretation of those answers, right? Because you've got your checklist out. Yes, he answered that correctly. No, he did not answer that correctly. All of those things. What do I need to know about him? Really, what I recommend is, instead of face-to-face activities, side to side. And so what I mean by that is, find something that's fun to do, that, especially if you're finding somebody, but by putting yourself in the best places to meet them, maybe, going out and going running, going and just walking in the park and getting a snow cone or getting an ice cream, doing something where it's more casual and fun, and that helps to deflate some of that pressure and interrogation. So it's not about the questions that you should ask on the first 3 dates. It's more about the feeling of being comfortable with each other. Because let's be honest, if you're comfortable with each other, more chemistry is likely to happen than by trying to figure out, am I answering his questions right?
Well, listeners, you can get much more of this of what to do on the first 3 dates when we invite Michelle back into the Coaching Lounge. Michelle, you've given so much information, and this show I'm going to listen back to 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times, multiple times, because, every word that you say is a snippet of, gold here, it's an ounce of gold. So, Michelle, our listeners will want to know how they can be in touch with you.
Yeah, so I'm on all the usual suspects of social media. You can find me on Facebook at Marketing to Marriage, Marketing to Marriage page. I'm on Instagram under Marketing to Marriage. Just search there. And on Twitter, I'm Michelle B, as in boy, Smith. But really, those are the main 3. If there's some Uber geeks out there, you can find me on LinkedIn.
All of the usual
and Google
suspects, as you say.
Those are,
And I really don't want this recording to end.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm just interested to know what sort of clients approach you then, when they recognize, actually, I need a dating coach to help me here. What sort of a theme with people who come to you?
I am really blessed in that I attract I attract people who are high-performing individuals, who are awesome people, and they're really successful in every other aspect of their life, but they feel like a failure in their love lives. And I'm not really, I'm not a therapist, so I'm not for people who are looking to cry and sob, though it's sometimes like we cry together. It's legit, you know. I feel what you're feeling, but I'm not here to fix you. I'm not here to you know, do your work, you know, so to speak. So I love working with people who are committed to success in all aspects of their life, and who want that success.
Michelle Barnum Smith, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you join us in the Coaching Lounge. Thank you so much for all the fascinating and interesting information you shared today. Take your place in the Coaching Lounge. Be inspired by discussions with motivational guests, compelling speakers, key people of influence, and models of success. Learn unique processes, strategies, and tips that will transform your life. Tune into previous episodes on www.thecoachinglounge.co.uk. Like our page on Facebook via The Coaching Lounge. Follow us on Twitter @SatelliteCoach. Thank you for joining your host, Rebecca Gordon, in the Coaching Lounge. Tune in, relax, engage, and transform your life now.